How's it going? Thanks for coming. I'm honored to be here and having a conversation with you.
Well, I'm honored to be here too. As somebody who ran for mayor before running for anything else, it's a big adventure. So I hope you're having fun. It kind of looks like it from the outside. I enjoyed it. What's this like?
I don't know if you were an extrovert or if you still are.
I
say that I can't imagine how anyone that's not extroverted does this.
Yeah.
I go and I have conversations in Ward 13 and then Ward 5 and then Ward 11, and when I come home, I have more energy than when I left the house, and that helps a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's also, I know you've played sports.
Yeah.
I think there's an aerobic quality to the thing where, okay, I'm going to door knock, X number of places, or I'm going to go to 7 events today, and I think one of the keys I just advise is to stay in the moment.
Yeah.
That you've got 57 things you're trying to do, and you've got 10 people you should have called 3 days ago and all that. And the more you can focus on what's ahead of you and the less about all the rest. So good luck. I really admire people for getting up off the couch, and too many people are sitting there complaining about others. So thanks for jumping up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, both of those things are true. I'm a zero inbox person. At the end of the day, my inbox has to be at 0. I've fallen behind on that rule now. I've fallen behind. And then the other, when you say aerobics, knocking doors. I was over by Pearl Park, right there on Portland Avenue, and my dad, being a post office worker for his entire career, he said only mail carriers cut across yards. So I would go up those giant sets of stairs on Portland, back down, over and around.
Do that.
So actually aerobic in that sense as well.
I know that thing, and I can't tell you the zillions of times I've stood there and thought, this is much closer. I'm giving you permission to cross people's lawns, and they're not going to be able to give you that permission. So if you get in trouble, I never said this.
Yeah, no, it never happened. Yeah. One of the things that I am asked most in this process is, why are you running for mayor? What gave you that first notion back when you were considering it initially?
I got onto it really, really early, and to me, I've sort of traced it back to real young, when my parents had a drugstore in the Phillips neighborhood, and I was living in Southwest, and from where my neighborhood was to where the store was, I got an understanding of what I now call a continuum of privilege. I got to recognize that not every kid my age had the same experience, and I remember a specific time when I was helping my parents deliver prescriptions and walking up to the door and handing a prescription to a kid my age and looking in the house, and I got it. And that's sort of been the motivator for my career on trying to figure out a way to heal that. And now when I go by my parents' old drugstore, which is now in this store called Minneapolis Market on Franklin, and Saturday night I was there, and it was a mess. And I realized we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So that's why I do what I do at the Minneapolis Foundation.
Yeah, and if someone doesn't know what you're doing at the Minneapolis Foundation, what is that?
I run the Minneapolis Foundation. 110 years, it's been a backbone for helping make good things happen in the community. We have our own dollars, which we put all into equity and justice and education, economic mobility and environment. And then people open up their own funds there, and they're generous. And what that means is that in the 8 years since I got there, we've gone from those fund holders putting out $40 million a year to $120 million.
Wow.
I don't control where all that goes, but we can influence them. And now especially are trying to focus them on closing equity gaps.
And, I've seen it show up in so many ways. I remember Lake Street, the amount of work that went into revitalizing that after the civil unrest, after the tragedy of George Floyd's murder. You see big things like that, but a lot of it is day-to-day work as well happening within our city too, right?
Yeah, it's in the case of Lake Street, our Restore, Rebuild, Reimagine Fund raised $15 million. We partnered that with $35 million from the state, put a community panel on, because I don't determine the grants. It's all about community panels in our team. That's the big stuff. Groundbreak, a huge initiative to try to get entrepreneurship for people of color. Those are big. The smaller things are whether we're helping to reintroduce bison to tribal communities in northern Minnesota for food sovereignty, or fresh produce at food shelves or helping do literacy tutors in schools. It's big and small, but it really means that my work at the Minneapolis Foundation is helping individuals help the political leaders make it a better place.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I'll never forget, I don't know if you remember this, how we initially connected.
Remind me. It's embarrassing.
I opened Twitter, which I, especially then, did not use much at all.
Yeah.
And I had a direct message from you. And it said, hey, I've seen some of the stuff you've been doing. I'd love to grab breakfast or a coffee.
Right.
And I was like, is this RT?
Yeah.
How many people are RT? And I thought, I didn't believe it was really you at first.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually we went and we grabbed breakfast in Uptown. If you remember or how you feel now, what made you kind of reach out and connect? And is that something you typically do?
I was a reporter for a bunch of years, so I didn't come up through a political system. And you're in this political world now, and there's a hierarchy of who are the gatekeepers of information. And as a reporter, I intentionally always went around that. So I would have seen you as somebody who had some good ideas and doing that. And I came more out of that than I came out of the political world. So to stay fresh when I was in office, I would very often connect with people who I just thought were saying interesting things, doing interesting things out there. Yeah. And I hope if you get into this job, you don't, I don't think you will, just sit in City Hall, that you listen to disruptive voices, and that hopefully maybe sometimes make you feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That makes you better.
Yeah, I think that I've had so many conversations with people where they will give their opinion or their hope for the city. One of my favorite things when I door knock, I used to say, what are your main concerns, or what are the main things you think about? And people would freeze. And now I say, if you had to finish the sentence, in the next 4 years, I hope that Minneapolis is.
That's good. That's good.
And hearing that from people is one of the most encouraging things, because it very rarely is something negative.
Yeah.
It's people saying, I see that our kids are graduating at really great rates across the board, or that our streets are feeling safer, and however they define that. And what I feel is truly optimism from people. And maybe it's because that's the ethos of Minneapolis to me.
Well, one of the things I like about the way you ask that question is it implies that the person you're talking to has an opinion that matters, but more important, has the ability to do something. Because a civic society, a community, is not a spectator sport. And so many people, like even now, will come up to me, what are you going to do about fill in the blank? Well, what the heck are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do together? And the issues are often so big right now that it paralyzes people. So the idea of give me one thing, the next question I'd ask after the election is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and
with me as a leader.
Right, and I felt that I've been at a lot of events recently, and people will say, what are you going to do about X or Y? And my first response is, what is the end goal that we're trying to reach?
Yeah.
Because that's how you can really walk back, in my opinion, from, okay, we want to have all students graduating at a 90% rate or 100% rate. What steps do we have to then take to get there?
Yeah.
And that's the part that we do have to do together. That's another question. How do you balance your ideas as a leader versus what you hear from the people that you are serving?
Yeah. Boy, there's no magic formula on that. Right. I laid out 5 zillion great ideas I thought were great ideas running for mayor, and a couple things happened. One is I recognized I couldn't pull all of those off, and two, sometimes I recognized I was wrong. I had this brilliant idea that we should plow every street in the city in 24 hours. When I got into office and I started understanding that, I realized that if we did this brilliant idea that I had, the people of color, people with language barriers, students, people in dense areas would all be in the impound lot.
Yeah.
And I'd be sitting out of the 13th ward with my nicely paved street, and people would be storming the barricades. You know? And so you won't know everything you need to know, but you don't have to know all of that.
Right.
There are a bunch of people, and in spite of what people say about government, there's some really good people within Minneapolis city government, and More important, they're really good people out in the community, because any of the good stuff I really got done, I didn't do solely in City Hall.
Yeah.
It was about mobilizing people.
To that people question, one of the most interactive videos I have online is when I explain that the city is a $1.9 billion organization annually, and we have 4,000 or so folks within the organization. What do you look for in the manager of that? What do you think is the success traits?
You know, I don't think voters should be looking for a manager. They should be looking for a leader. That leader needs to understand how to hire managers. I stumbled through a inconsistent first term until I brought in Tina Smith to be my chief of staff and an incredible guy, Stephen Bosacker, to be city coordinator. They were in charge of the day-to-day running of the city, built on the vision that I had and the perspective I had and my ability to go out and mobilize people and listen to people. What I mean by that is that I'm really glad Tina got elected senator, because it's about time that the women who've been making men like me look good actually got the job.
Yes.
More important, it's not a hero leadership thing, even though it's the mayor this, the mayor that. And so we need to recognize that there are huge management issues. Managing the budget became a huge issue because we were in a massive budget crisis, and with all the devaluations of office buildings, if the current mayor gets elected, or if you get elected, or whoever, there's going to be serious financial issues. You don't need to manage the budget. You need to lead and figure out where the dollars should go that represent the values of this community. So you'll lead the budget. You don't have to do the math. I guess you're pretty good at math and computer stuff. But what you really need to do is to say, a budget is like a big values puzzle. Put the money on the values you have, like a chessboard almost. And that's a very different thing than being an accountant.
Yeah.
We got lots of good accountants. We need a leader.
It's almost like I had read that in a book that you had written or something, because I just posted a video, I think yesterday or the day before, where I said, the budget is so much more than numbers in an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. It's how we explain the values of our city.
I hope you don't get to the point where you're old enough that you repeat things that you thought you never said before and you actually wrote in a book. So yeah, maybe I said that, I think, but I feel that. Yeah,
and it's so important when I'm having conversations with folks. It's often, where are you going to take this dollar from to get this other thing done? And what they're actually explaining when I hear that is, we need to move these pieces where we see the most need, or where we're trying to make the most progress in our city. And that shows with how we kind of allocate that budget and what we're going to do with it.
And the budget is not the only thing, but it's a huge tool, and it's hugely important. And you can say all these words, but a lot of it is whether you're putting the money there. But it doesn't stop at money. One of the most important tools of a mayor or any political leader, but especially the mayor, is you have the ability, more than anybody, to craft the public narrative, to be the conduit that people express information to, and then hopefully see their values coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
That's a very, very different thing. It's an incredible privilege, too.
Yeah. And I think I've had a lot of conversations with folks around a similar kind of nuance, which is, if we can choose any specific part of public safety, if it's doing better or worse, even if it's true and people don't feel that way, how do you navigate that really well?
Yeah.
And I hear that around if certain kinds of crimes are down compared to last year or 2 years ago, but people are consistently saying they feel less safe. How do you navigate kind of the explaining the value that we've driven at the same time?
Boy, that's, it's such a complicated question, and I never fully got it right. Early on, I felt my job was to come up with a simple answer for, am I safe? And I honestly thought my job was to say you're safe. A, not everybody is safe. B, you're never safe enough.
Yeah.
And so that question, am I safe, is a real trick question for a politician. And I never liked that, because you can always be safer. It's a cost-benefit thing, which you're talking to somebody who's afraid to have their kid walk to school, you're not going to talk about cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is about the idea that, first off, putting the safety issue into a we. There is this dynamic of, I pay taxes, you send cops, that solves safety. Anybody who knows anything about public safety knows that, well, cops are an important piece of that. It's really important to mobilize the community behind what they can do. The best example of that in my time was when we did the Youth Violence Prevention Initiative, the huge crime wave of 2005 and 6. It was really serious.
Yeah.
We did tougher enforcement, but we did more than anything, we did this upstream youth violence prevention initiative. I hope whoever gets elected mayor will focus more on the connective tissue between all of the different early interventions that you can work on. We've had a massive debate since George Floyd was murdered that national media helped paralyze into these absurd categories. Are you for cops or are you for defunding the police? That's just a bunch of bull. And it was complicated because we had everybody in the world looking at us on that. I think we should pull back from that and say, we need to put money in enforcement, but if we do this right, if we invest in all of those upstream solutions, we don't have to have a police force of 15,000 people. I mean, look at the way Trump's trying to solve every problem by putting money into weapons of war and all of that, and not looking at cutting SNAP benefits and not cutting the other. The fact of the matter is there are ways for us to solve every problem we have in Minneapolis if we pull Minneapolis together. And the number one issue that I see in front of the community right now is finally getting back to one Minneapolis.
Yes.
And I don't endorse in these races on purpose so I can help everyone get better. But more than anybody in this race, you have been the one who has been focused on bringing this city together. And you did that from the very beginning when you said, I'm not running against anybody, I'm running for this city. And I really want to applaud you more than any candidate for being the one who is focused on lifting up the common good. And I think there are great people running. I know them all. I could say nice things about it, but nobody is trying to unify the city overtly, at least, as much as you are. And that's a huge thing that you're doing.
I appreciate that. And it actually, when I considered running, that was one of the things my wife and I talked about, that there's so much division across the nation, especially on a federal political level. And in a city where we are led by Democrats, we have an opportunity to come together and push forward and do things collectively together. And here's the thing, we love diversity, and that within this ecosystem includes diversity of thought of some of our leaders.
Very much so.
If you live in Ward 13 and you're the representative of Ward 13, they have different desires in Ward 13 than in Ward 6. They are different groups of folks that have different hopes. And it's, in my opinion, it's always the mayor's job to be like a filter that takes all of that information down and produces something that moves the entire city forward.
And to give those people in Ward 13 a path to help others. I stood at a whole lot of street corners in the middle of the night at vigils in North Minneapolis with a whole lot of people from other parts of town, especially Southwest Minneapolis, who said we're in it together. And that value matters a lot. Right now, this city is under huge threat with a common enemy. And it is the administration in Washington that is putting a target on the backs of cities like this, of the populations that we have welcomed and have made this community better. And if there's ever a time for this city to come together, it's now. And I am deeply disappointed that a bunch of independent expenditures on both quote-unquote sides in this election, as if you could simplify that, are pumping money into negative campaigns. And by the way, these are friends of mine. I admire them for getting up off the couch and doing something, but it is wrong-headed right now to have this race be determined by who is the least bad. And it's so clear to me sitting from the outside what is, I'm sure, much harder on the inside. But if you can't look at what's happening in Washington and then look at somebody who's in the different quote-unquote camp that has divided this city for the last number of years, you're not paying attention to the complete overt threats to really our way of life here.
Yeah.
I was at the African Development Center event Saturday night, and somebody so near to my heart, Hussein Samatar, who started that and since died, set off an incredible wave of entrepreneurship for people coming from the African continent. We've done great things, and we can't let this great city be turned into half of one person's dream, or more important, half of one person's fears. We've got to go with hope.
Yeah, and it should be the dreams and not the nightmares that are being cast in this moment. I all too often I feel like people are talking, and this is across the spectrum of this conversation, people are talking about other people rather than their vision for what we're going to do. And the hope that we can instill in people. I so much would rather be on a stage or in an interview talking about a conversation that someone told me of their hopes and dreams in the city rather than something else that another person running said. The root of what we're trying to do here is lift up those voices and not drown out each other's voices in the process.
When you're hearing other people, what are some good ideas they've given you?
I hear so much about the early intervention for youth. All too often we're hearing that whether it's broken windows or stolen cars, that it's young folks doing this. And I always think of it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where if there's broken glass in front of me and I'm barefoot, I'm looking directly at my feet to ensure that I don't step on them. It's hard for me to look down the street and see the great things that are coming when I have to look at what's right in front of me. And that's the analogy for how so many of our young people are feeling right now. And people want us to do simple things like extending rec hours. They want us to have more programming that is free or at least financially accessible in the summer, so not only academic slides don't happen, but kids have somewhere to be and to feel like a part of a community. When I was growing up, no one in either side of my parents' family went to college. No one had graduated from college. And so for me to think I can do that, it took other people showing me the opportunity. I could name 50 people in my life that if any one of them were removed, where I sit today might not be possible. And we need to afford more of those opportunities to the kids in our city. And not only will that improve graduation rates and people that are starting and growing businesses, it will improve crime and the amount of resources we have to pump into that. To the point that you were making earlier about those earlier interventions, I often hear people say it's like taking daily medication. If I take my daily medication every day, yes, it might cost me a few dollars, but it'll save me an ER trip that'll cost tens of thousands of dollars down the road. And that's how we have to look at our early intervention for kids. That's what I'm hearing a lot from people.
Well, boy, what you just described is great, and I really encourage you to stay in that, because what you just described is over a few years of doing that youth violence prevention work. That's really a public health approach to youth violence prevention. It's primary, secondary, and tertiary intervention. And by the way, you don't say to a community, I'm doing tertiary intervention. Primary, what is the first sign of at-risk behavior and how do we stop it? Secondary, how do we rejuvenate kids? The third is to make sure we don't throw them away. We never give up on a kid. And that's why we decided the first sign of at-risk behavior is curfew and truancy. So we set up the Curfew and Truancy Center. But the value was every young person surrounded by a trusted adult. So when you're talking about the rec center and all of that, you don't have to wind up with kids further down the continuum. You said something really smart in there too about if there's something in front of you, you can't look down the road. Years after I was mayor, I ran Generation Next. It was on education equity. And they talked a lot about executive function. Why does a kid be assigned a book report? You get a book report in school, not because of reading the book, but because you have to plan how to do this report over time. That's executive function, the ability to look down the road. But if you're raised in a place where there's imminent threats, you can't develop the skill to look down the road. If you're walking in the woods and you feel safe, you can think big thoughts. If you're walking in the woods and a bear is there, you're not thinking big thoughts. And if the kid is being raised in a place where there are imminent threats, they don't have that executive function. They're not able to be as competitive in the business world, and more important, they can't navigate their life choices. So there's a lot of science behind what you just said.
You know, and I learned that firsthand growing up. So I don't know if you even know this about me. I'm the youngest of four, growing up in a 1,300 square foot house in Richfield.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to Richfield public schools. And my brother's friend came over and said, can I spend the night? My parents are going through it on the north side, a young black man, or kid. He was probably sophomore year. And he didn't stay for 3 days, he stayed for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then after him, it was Vernon and Jamal and Rodney and Jamal and Jamar and Craig and Leon and Deontay and so on. 10 kids that lived in our house, minimum of 2 years,
Yeah.
to have a stable place to lay their head and to grow up and have consistent meals. My mom being the saint making all of these
Right.
meals.
Wow.
And the outcomes for each one of those kids, because the glass was no longer at their feet. And they could look up and lean on that executive
Yeah.
function.
Yeah.
People will say, you know, a lot of the way I look at these things is these early interruptions, and do you think it works? I've seen it work.
Yeah.
I've seen it work firsthand, and
Yeah.
all of their lives changing for the better. And if my parents can do that with 10 young black boys from the north side, what can we do as a city
Bingo.
to move us forward
Yeah.
and to make it better for literally everyone, not
Yeah.
even just those kids?
That's exactly it. And so what policy or committee would you work through that at City Hall? Before you answer it, I'm going to say there's not one.
Yeah, right.
I would say that's what leadership is you figure out, okay, there's some way to get some of that going at City Hall. There's some way, here's the faith community, which can be like incredibly helpful. Here's the philanthropic community.
Yeah.
Come to us to ask us to support
Yeah.
youth violence prevention. We'll do it, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's really where the executive function of the mayor has to be, how do I deal with what's in front of me right now? Last night there was a mass shooting. How do you mitigate that situation? But how do you figure out why are we having so many mass shootings? What about that encampment, you know? And so thinking short-term and long-term at the same time.
Yeah, and I think around this topic, I actually just had this conversation during my interview with the teachers union yesterday. It isn't your job to go out to the community and talk to 430,000 people. It's your job to find the leaders within these groups that are dealing with all of these things and say, help me understand what you are seeing as the problem, and collectively let's build the solution. So it is the faith leaders that you have to sit down with.
Yeah.
I'm on was on before I started running 3 nonprofit boards where their Catholic charities, dollar for dollar, houses folks better than anyone else. What are you all seeing that is successful, and how can we replicate that more within our city? Whether it's nonprofits, the community leaders, faith leaders, it's about convening these groups and not just doing it to say, you have a seat at the table, doing it to say, we need to continue expanding this table to do the work together.
Yeah, boy, I think that's really good experience. And I do think there is so many people in this moment who come up to me and say, what can I do? And the answer is everybody can do something. And by the way, when I was mayor, now, certainly, it's not my job to figure that out. I can help you. But to basically create a climate in which people recognize every small thing. Your parents taking kids into your house were worth a whole lot of line items and budgets.
Yeah.
And and not just in the immediate, but in public services down the road, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody can do something, and I think the job of mayor, especially in Minneapolis, in a city that isn't just exactly a political town, I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but I feel it pretty strongly from my days as a reporter. Who's the mayor matters. How the community ecosystem works is how this city's always worked.
Yeah.
City Hall leads some things, but mostly it's this amorphous kind of thing. And the mayor has the ability to convene that more than anyone. The only person who really can convene that. You know, I try to do what I can from sitting at the Minneapolis Foundation, other people do too. But the mayor is the one person who everybody in town says, this person more than anybody else, we want leading this. And that wonderful privilege, and it's an amazing privilege, is it's necessary to use it.
Yeah.
and ask people for help and give them permission to get in. And I think also tell them there's a responsibility with that. I think too often it's, oh, please help. Get off your butt and keep building a great city, you know?
Yeah.
And my wife won't go to dinner parties with me anymore. It's like wine, 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 oh, Trump, oh, this, oh, that. And at a certain point in every dinner party, I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Get up,
Yeah.
do something, you know. I don't have much tolerance for that. I think as mayor, you would have to have more. I think my tolerance got a little worn out on that. And right now I'm like, you're either in the fight or you're not, you know.
Right.
So
you know, when people ask me why I decided to run, obviously there's a collection of a million reasons, but one of the things I always say is, I've always been a person where, like, if I saw something and I felt myself complaining about it or feeling frustrated about it, I then think can I do anything about the thing I feel frustrated about?
Right.
And whether it was starting turn signal to connect drivers to an attorney after George Floyd's tragic murder, or whether it was work at the Great North Innocence Project and wrongful convictions, or joining the boards, whether it's Catholic Charities or others. It was me seeing something and saying, someone should do something, and then thinking, can I be the someone?
Yeah.
And that's how I felt in this moment with a city that is so divided, that is just yearning for us to unify the city and to move us forward on the policies and practices that we are desperate for. Mm-hmm. Who can do that? And I thought of all of the things, whether it's social justice work I've done, or teaching a finance course, or wrongful conviction stuff, or building a business in the city. All of the experiences that can funnel down into, I think I'm the person that can move us forward, and collectively. That's I've sat down with every single city council member, or had a one-on-one walk with them, or talked with them, and all of them I say we have varying viewpoints on certain issues.
Yeah.
But I cannot wait to sit down and work through this together.
Boy, that's really good.
And that is what I'm so excited about doing.
Yeah.
And honestly, why even some of them who are supporting that know that I do not have the same political ideologies, it's almost the best thing, I feel like, to say we don't align perfectly politically. Boy, would I like that person to be mayor.
Yeah. That's really great to hear, because it's very disturbing from the outside, especially because I've gotten to know the whole council, a lot of other folks around that, and I don't see this big divide. I see a lot of leaders with different perspectives collectively have phenomenal things, and it's so frustrating for me to not see. And I think this is also important generationally. People my age are having trouble recognizing that just to get the hell out of the way and let new leaders come in. And I do think that part of the divide we have in the city, the most disturbing part of it to me, is the way it breaks generationally.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time talking to people my age, which is a whole hell of a lot older than you are, to recognize that if there are ideas that are much more popular to people who are younger, that's not a new thing.
Yeah.
I came of age, I was very politically aware very early, so I was very aware of the Vietnam War protests, of all of this. I was a reporter covering radical new people coming into City Hall who wound up becoming the establishment, and then when I ran, I was part of another thing, and now it's way past time for people like me to move past and cheer people on and help as I can from the sidelines. So that divide we have in the city, and that generational one, I hope is something you'll focus a lot on.
It is something I feel like people don't understand. They define the divide in so many ways before they would generational sometimes. And I think it does speak to, I always say every generation thinks the one that came before them was absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe you all allowed X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because even the new generation right now that's doing this work, the next one's going to say it about you as well. And that's the way that we continue to progress in our society. Exactly. And it takes some time to recognize that is a cycle and not a line.
Yeah. And, it's a cycle. It's almost also sort of concentric circles, that's
Yeah.
not the word I want. It's a progressive circle, meaning there's an element of always that is something new, toward arc of justice bends toward progress. I'm butchering it,
Yeah.
sorry. But, it's the idea that we're not always returning to the same place. I don't ever want to return to the same place. And I know, like, when we were putting all that resource into rebuilding Lake Street and West Broadway in 38, we called it Restore, Rebuild, Reimagine.
Yeah.
So in those circles, to always build reimagine in.
Yeah.
I, was born in a great city. I think I live in a great city. I think it can be a much better city.
Yeah.
And I hope when it's a much better city, we aspire to a much better city. This is not a place that has succeeded by sitting in one place.
Right.
And if we can get over the divides that we have right now, and I know they're significant to people, but bluntly, the divides we see in this city are trivial compared to the divides we see in this country and this world.
Yes.
And Minneapolis needs to get its, can I say Minneapolis needs to get its collective shit together? I
Yep.
guess I will.
Yep.
In one direction. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to agree that we're not going to be part of what is happening in Washington right now. And we can show people a better way. And we've done it before and we can do it again, but only if I think this campaign takes a more positive turn, and only if people like you continue to hold up the ability to bring people together.
And
So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree more. I think that I was listening to someone and they said if we tried to get every piece of the civil rights movement into the first act that passed in 1964, we would have been stuck there forever.
Yeah.
There's progress that continually needs to be made, and saying this is just the first step and we need more. No one thought Obamacare was going to be perfect, and we need to continue to improve it. But thank goodness that millions and millions of people have health insurance now. And that is part of the process that I feel like is sometimes not talked about. That we have to make incremental progress, and doing it collectively, even if you're doing it with people that have differences, is progress that we need to see right now.
Yeah, good.
So.
Well, can I just say I've said, and I'll say again, how much I appreciate you being an uplifting, positive candidate, and I just hope you continue to have fun doing it. What a privilege to knock on somebody's doors. I had a great time doing it. I'm really happy somebody else is doing it right now, however. So
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your viewpoint of unity and bringing us to get forward together. And truly, that's what my campaign, and when I say to people, when you go to vote, I want you to feel as if you are excited to go vote. You aren't going to vote against something, you're going to vote for someone or something because you're excited and it's feeling you should leave with a smile on your face. And I feel like we have gotten away from that a little bit. And I want people to go into that ballot, fully rank it, and leave there with a smile on their face, knowing that we can move this city forward together.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Have fun.
Appreciate it. Thank you.